Welcome everybody to another episode of the show, whatever you want to call it. Ooh. Anyway, I am Paul Doski with my lovely fiance
Tessa Baker,
and we are here to talk to you about a lot of things. Maybe we're going to talk to you about a short film called The Muck. Maybe then we're going to talk about another film called The Rake, and then finally we're going to wrap it all up, tie it with a nice little bow, and throw it into the basement. It's going to be known as the anthology Skeletons in the Closet. And with us talking about these films is none other than Tony Wash.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And Ben Lewandowski.
Hello.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you for joining us, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, real quick, I think this is going to be probably the shortest amount of questions that we have here, and I'll do my best with you, Ben, too, to maybe pick your brain about the film as much as I can. But I am curious, Tony, of The Rake. Now, the first thing I thought of when I heard The Rake was the creepypasta monster. Now, was that the inspiration, or was that from, like, the Native American legend, like the Wendigo and stuff?
Yeah, the initial premise of the movie was, or the creation of the idea for us to make a movie off of The Rake was from the creepypasta. Jason Kane, who is our special effects supervisor, was talking with me one night in 2014 and was like, okay, why don't we let's make a monster movie. Why don't we make one based on the Rake creepypasta? It's really cool. And so he had me read the creepypasta, and, I didn't want to pull from the story too much because, for one, it seemed very typical to a lot of other creatures in the night, type of concepts. And, we weren't really informed on whether or not we had to concern ourselves with copyright infringement because creepypastas are on the internet. So technically there really is no copyright infringing that can be done on those. But at the same time, something like Slender Man is so popular now that I'd be hard pressed to believe that the creators of these creepypastas that are gaining popularity aren't trying to do something to protect their legal, rights. But so it started based off of, reading that concept and kind of using the title to create a comparison so that audience members would instantly say, oh, well, that's a monster movie, as opposed to, oh, it's a movie about a garden tool, But then as we started developing the story between my co-writer, Jeremy Silva, and myself, we started really fleshing it out and determining that we wanted to take it a different route to where it wasn't so on the nose as the creepypasta. And then, as we developed the creature design between Jason Kane and myself, a lot of the different appearances for it were kind of come up separate from what the creepypasta is traditionally thought to look like. It's more monkey-like and kind of impish, whereas, we wanted this thing to be tall and gaunt, but since it's supposed to be like a pestilence, like an infection or a disease, I wanted it to have like really rotted flesh and yada yada yada. There's tons of details that we could talk about for hours with it, but and then other things like my cinematographer and one of my co-producers, Rob Stern, he's the one who said, hey, what if we did like a barb on one hand instead of another set of claws? That way it like hooks you with the barb and then it scratches you or grabs you with the claw or whatever,
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask you about that because I know with the creepypasta version, you got actual two regular hands, and then in this case, you got a blade-looking hand at the left arm, and then you got a regular hand in the right. So that's very interesting to know, though. And I do like the creature design.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, I think when Rob initially mentioned it, I'm not a big fan of things that are asymmetrical. At first, I really was not a fan of it, but everybody else seemed to think it was kind of a cool idea. And, I, contrary to what some people I work with may say, I try and utilize other people's opinions and thoughts. It's like, when you're a producer director, and Ben can attest to this as well, it's like there's a certain amount of feeding into other people's creative concepts, and then there's that percentage where you have to kind of put your foot down and say, these are things that I want, this is how I want it to be, and that's the job of the director. And you can't always sit and say, oh, well, I'm being a selfish prick. You have to remember that that's your job. So ultimately with the Barb, it was something that I said, you know what, everybody else seems to think it's pretty cool, and it's an interesting idea. The only reason I don't like it is because I like symmetrical things, so, a perfect example is that really ugly, what was it, a Honda or a Hyundai, that weird little like SUV car where like half of the back of it was like a window around the corner and the other half was like metal, and it was just fucking stupid looking. I can swear on this, right?
Yeah, you can swear on this.
Yeah, we have no filter, so you're good.
We don't even know what a fucking filter is ourselves. So, oops, I fucking swore.
Fair enough. So yeah, so I just, I that was one of those things where I said, you know what, I may not really like it, but a couple other people think it's pretty cool, and let's just run with it. Let's do something a little different. It further separates this from other creatures out there, and yeah, I think that's definitely something that no one, there's criticisms, there's people who love the Rake, there's people who hate the Rake. No one can say that the Rake has bad special effects, because I think that Jason and his team did a tremendous job on the special effects in that movie.
Yes, I will 100% back that up, that the special effects were probably one of the best things about the movie, for sure. Just because of the amount of details in the creature alone, and just, yeah, I mean, it was just I can't even think of the word really. Like, it was just a nice touch to the creepypasta monster in like real life form, if that makes sense. Like, rather than the pictures that we get from the internet for the stories, which
sure, yeah,
photoshopped. Yeah.
They did a nice job of bringing it to life, and there was I want to say there was maybe about a dozen effects artists involved altogether. And I think they did such a tremendous job, in bringing this thing to life, and, watching Tom Cassidy and Reed Cesar like working on building the suit up in the basement of my house for 3 weeks prior to shooting. And Jason and a bunch of the other guys, Jason would sculpt the head, and then he'd send it to this guy, Eric, to make the mask out of. He had an oven that he would cook the latex in, and that's how the mask was made. And then, all these guys, building the animatronics for the head so that the mouth could open, and when the creature screams in the movie and stuff. And it was just such a cool process to see. And I went to special effects school. I went to Tom Savini Special Effects School about 13 years ago. I graduated, and so I have an effects background, but I don't really practice it as much because it just takes a certain degree of talent creatively. And so watching these guys create this stuff with their bare hands was so amazing. And I think it plays well on camera. They did a great job. So.
Oh, well, I'll have to give you props. Me and Tessa and I actually met Tom Savini last year at ScareCon in Massachusetts.
The New England ScareCon.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of interesting that you said that you graduated from his practical effects class, which that looks amazing. And just by chance, what would the requirements of joining his class? I'm just wondering out of curiosity.
Well, there's no requirements. I mean, I want to say we had to take. I want to say we had to take an entry like basic admissions test, which was like 50 questions or something like that, and it I think it was called the Wonderlic test, I think is what it was called, and it's like what they give
NFL players.
What's that?
It's the same test they give to NFL players to make sure they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to bring up. Is like an NFL player has to score like an 18% on it or something in order to be in the NFL. So it's not a very difficult test. I want to say it was mostly common sense type stuff, but other than that, really, I mean, the biggest thing is just being able to afford it. You know, it was a 16-month program. You get an associate's degree when you graduate. And so I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from like October of 2004 until Easter weekend of 2006. And, went to the school, graduated, and while I was doing my fourth semester there, I was shooting my first movie. It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, while I was living there. And so it was a cool school for sure, but you get out of it what you put into it. If you go to the school and you just fuck around in class all day, you're not going to learn anything and you're wasting, thousands of dollars. But if you go and you pay attention and you have that natural talent and work ethic, then you can go and do great things. Jason not only does the effects work for our movies, but he creates clowns mask for Slipknot. He's done his last 2 masks for his last couple tours. A guy I went to school with, Kevin Kirkpatrick, I believe he's an Emmy Award winner now. He's worked on True Detective and American Horror Story and Westworld. So there's a lot of people that get a lot out of it, and then there's a lot of people who don't get anything out of it. So it was an interesting experience, though.
Nice. And speaking of challenges and stuff, Ben, when you had to put together the Rake for, I think you were an additional editor, I believe. What was some of the hardest things about editing the parts that you had?
Well, you got to remember that my version of the Rake is not the version that you guys have seen. Tony and I worked on what would be fair to call it an alternate version. Our version's a lot different.
Well, okay.
I don't know how far you want to. I don't know how far you want to go down that rabbit hole, Tony. But
no, I mean it's Ben and I spent 4 months. We were editing the movie. Ben was editing the movie, and I was basically, we would have a couple of sessions where we would sit for 4 or 5 days together, and I would work with him and kind of tell him what I like and what I don't like. But Ben is the instrumentalist when it comes to editing our projects. He's the one who sits in front of the computer and uses the program, and kind of puts everything together, and we'll kind of discuss ideas and whatnot. And so his edit was very cutting edge. It was very very non-traditional when it comes to visually, and stylistically how he was making it work. And a lot of what he was doing, you'll see nowadays, and over the last few years, we've seen in a lot of different movies and shows. I know American Horror Story Roanoke, in particular, utilized a lot of what he was doing. I think the new Blair Witch movie did a lot of it. Even that, I've seen a handful of other films that have done the same thing. And so, ultimately, I think that our co-producers were not happy with it. I think that they were looking for something more traditional, more cookie cutter. And so they went then and had a re-edit done of the movie. And so, it was an interesting process. It's not something that I ever care to go through again, but, it's the movie's out there now and people are watching it. So, it's just unfortunate because, Ben put a lot of work into the movie, and I was very happy with what he had created, and would have loved to have had the opportunity for people to have seen, what he did with it. So, that's part of the process of making a movie, though. If you if you are not making something that you have complete control over, it's part of the process is relinquishing degrees of control and learning to work with other people and, learning to accept other people's opinions and decisions, whether you agree with them or not. So it's an interesting process.
Tony handled that very diplomatically. You can tell that he's practiced that answer.
I always have a hard time figuring out. Yeah, I always have a hard time figuring out.
That's probably a separate podcast, in all honesty.
It happens. Ben, just out of curiosity too, is like, what got you into wanting to edit films?
I'm an idiot.
There's got to be a better reason than that.
I'm a major idiot. You know what? I get asked to go back to my alma mater, Columbia in Chicago, all the time, and they have me speak to the first-year film school students. And this is the first thing I ask. I go, all right, how many of you guys want to be directors? And always, without fail, 95% of the class puts their hands up. Yeah, I want to be a director. I'm like, all right, that's great. Now, who wants to make money in this business? Same number of hands go up. I'm like, all right, here's the bad news. You're not going to make money that way. You need to find a secondary skill. When I was in film school, I learned very early on that nobody wanted to edit. And there's a very good reason for it, because you're alone. It's the loneliest place in Hollywood, they say. You're on your own, and some people just can't handle it. But I figured out quickly you can make money while I was in film school cutting other people's movies. So honestly, it's a terrible answer. I should be saying it's for the love of cinema, and I love my art, and blah, blah, blah. But the simple reason is I could pay my bills while in film school. And I learned how to cut on motion picture film, and it taught me a great deal of patience. And I think it's there that I figured out that that's probably what I was going to do. I wanted to direct too, but I knew that was going to be a long shot, because they're just, when you have the A spot, the A chair, those jobs are just not a lot of them. Whereas opposed to, everyone needs an editor, literally. That's how I got into it. Capitalism is why I got into it.
The great thing about Ben is that, like, Ben brings, from what I feel like, a lot of editors are just they're by the book. They assemble the film, and that's really all that they do. And Ben actually adds his own style to an edit. And the movie High on the Hog that comes out next week that we produced along with Kevin Lockhart and that I directed, Ben edited that. And if you were to look at the two different edits of that movie, because that film went through the same thing that kind of the Rake went through, where we had an edit of it, and then ultimately we created a second edit of it. And what did you say, Ben?
Just the same scenario, was just backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Ben's edit of High on the Hog made it an entirely different film. And if it wasn't for his stylistic choices and his own talent in that respect, it would not be nearly as cool of a movie as it is. So that's what's really cool about having somebody like Ben as an editor on your project.
Once you get good at something, you just can't get out of it, unfortunately, Ben. That seems to be the case here, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I've created a reputation for myself where I specialize in salvaging other movies. And to piggyback on what Tony says, I mean, that's really all film editing is. It's the movie's basically written 3 times. Screenwriting phase, physical production when the movie's directed, and then in the editing room. And yeah, it's tough to get out of once you've got a reputation for something. I can't complain, most editors I know are unemployed, so I stay very busy, so I can't complain.
And like I tell people most of the time, it's always good to stay busy. And I mean, from what I've seen so far, Ben, of what you have edited between the Rake and Skeleton, which we're going to be talking about momentarily, is like you've done a good job for editing. I mean, I I can definitely tell you do a fantastic job. I mean, I guess I can't really say like you're a amateur because you're not, because you have like a lot of films underneath your belt, like 17 credits for the editor stuff and editorial department. So I mean, you're like you said, you're building a reputation. So, and I mean, I guess you're doing the good thing to not really have people complain that it was edited badly. I guess is what I want to say. I I mean. I mean, I haven't seen any type of flaws anyway so far from, like I said, from what I've seen edited by you. So I would say kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
Now,
Oh shit! What was it taking a year? I mean, I think Skeletons was edited over the course of like how many months? I mean, it's got to be a thorough job, you know.
right, but we're also looking at where we got segments and skeleton versus I guess, just one thing of the Rake. So I guess with the segment, if one got done, I mean, I guess you could just edit it together real quick to get it ready for the full edit of the skeleton, which definitely looked like it could have taken more time than what you're saying. But I mean, I just know some people where they film a couple things, they'll throw the edit together so that way they don't have to worry about it in the long run, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, another another thing that I noticed, Tony, is the kid within the Rake. Because would children are often protected from violent images. How does somebody convince a child artist, or actor, I should say, like their actual parents, to allow their children to be part of like a slasher horror film?
I majority of the children actors that I've worked with over the 15 years I've been directing are, because every project I think I've directed has in some way, shape, or form involved a kid, if not multiple kids. Not very many animals, thankfully, but mostly kids. And most of the people that I work with are professional actors in the sense of, their parents are privy to the industry and understand that sometimes subject matter is not necessarily meant for their children's age, even though the kid has to be a part of the production. And ultimately, every parent is going to read the script prior to allowing their kid to audition for the role, much less get on set and actually be a part of the production. So everybody, all the parents are informed ahead of time. With Skeletons in the Closet, the little girl who's watching the show on TV, Jamie, is my friend Karen's daughter. So Karen and I have known each other for a number of years now, and all three of her children are actors. So it was very easy to get her involved because Karen knew the type of movies that I made and knew that I was a good person, so I wasn't going to exploit, her child or show her child anything that she shouldn't see. Not to mention Lainey, the little girl in Skeletons, is actually a big horror movie fan, so she actually really enjoys all of that stuff. And of course, her mother doesn't. So that ends up being kind of a funny little connection that Lainey and I have. And so, that it's the same thing with the Rake, where the little boy is this kid named Joey, he's probably 15, 16 now. And his little sister in the movie is Alexa. And they were both, professional actors. Joey was actually, I want to say he was SAG. Alexa was not. but she had been auditioning for a lot of different stuff, and her mom was on set the whole time. And they would. I think that set teachers also kind of do a really good job of like incorporating an adult audience, meaning like an adult who's on set aside from their mother or father who's there with them is kind of talking to them about what they're doing on set, not just teaching them their classroom stuff. And so it's like the teacher, I want to say at points, was kind of like, oh, did you like doing that? Was that fun? So like, tell me about it. Like, explain to me what they were doing. So that way the kid has the opportunity to kind of, relive it in a real setting, so that they're not like getting, sucked into the fact that they were standing next to a guy who slits his throat, or that type of stuff, and they're seeing all these scary things. But a lot of the kids love all the makeup and blood and stuff. They think it's fun. Kids aren't really scared of stuff like we used to be. When generations ago, when we didn't have the internet and stuff like that poisoning our souls at a ripe young age. So,
that is true.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think a lot of people like myself and maybe Tessa can agree that when it comes to children in horror film, they always make it 10 times more creepier because, I can't really say why it makes it more creepier, but I can just say like it just makes it much more creepier.
It adds to the ambiance.
Yeah, like one of my favorite films besides Children of the Corn is if anybody remembers the 8th film to die for film called Wicked Little Things. That would probably be one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Oh yeah.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I think like there's the new movie that's on Netflix, that Mercy Black. That movie's getting a lot of attention, and that actually, in a lot of ways, has a lot of similarities to The Rake, I think. But the director did a nice job of really incorporating child actors into that, and actually involving violent situations with the children. Because you look at things like, Channel Zero has done it a little bit. Obviously now It is bringing that back, where you've got kids dealing with, scary real life horror. And I really like that a lot, because children are innocent. So no matter what, you really don't want to see a kid get hurt or killed in a movie. Whereas, a lot of us watch horror movies and we root for the bad guy because we want the bad guy to take out the idiot or the annoying main characters. And so, kids, it's different. You're not going to watch a horror movie and be like, yeah, kill that little kid. Like that's just fucked up. So I think it adds a sense of concern for the audience, and like it builds more tension, and kids also, they have greater imaginations than adults do. So seeing scary things through the eyes of a child is always much more terrifying, because you feel like the kid is helpless in the situation.
I agree, and I have to touch on that part that you mentioned about the whole we don't want to see a child get hurt and stuff. Is God, I don't know if we talked about it or if I heard it somewhere else, but somebody made an interesting point how us horror fans, we will root for an adult to get killed, but when it comes to a kid, we want them to like you said, not get hurt, not get killed. But we just don't care if like an adult male or an adult female that's like going on a killing spree dies. It's really weird how we think, I guess. But I think it just goes back to what you said. We just don't want to see a kid get hurt. And the other example that they gave is like if we see if we see a kid that is crying, right, we will rush to help them out. But if we see like an adult that's crying or whatever, just for the example, we won't actually go and help the adult. We'll go help the kid because, we just feel sorry for the kid. We need to know what's wrong with the kid to go comfort the kid.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think that adults are not as helpless as children. So you feel like if an adult is dealing with a problem, chances are they can handle it themselves. And people, especially nowadays in society, most people don't want the help of strangers or others. You know, they want to do things on their own. They don't want to be involved in a social interaction because that means you've got to put on a face or you've got to talk to somebody else or whatever. And, you know, so I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic, but I definitely try to incorporate kids into a majority of my concepts because um, it's very difficult to scare an audience nowadays unless they don't like scary movies. But if you are a fan of a horror film, I think it's very hard to scare horror fans. And so involving kids, I think, helps because they're more helpless. It makes it easier to get an audience on the edge of their seat when they think that something terrible is going to happen to a child.
Yeah, I'll agree with that for sure. Now, this question came from my other buddy here. He was wondering why what I gotta like reword his text here. So he trying to ask why did you guys go with a house in the woods as a setting for after the prologue part of the Rake?
So we wanted what we really wanted to do. The whole thing was this: the Rake was created because we were trying to make a feature length version of our short film, The Muck, and when we couldn't raise the money to make a large scale production like The Muck into a feature length movie, which would involve it's an 80s movie, so it would involve multiple houses that take place in the 80s, you know, that are decorated in the 80s. It's got a lot more monster effects work, more characters. When we realized that we weren't going to be able to get The Muck made, and this was the fall of 2014, I was really disappointed that we weren't going to be able to get a movie made. And that's when I went and had a conversation with Jason, my effects artist, and he's like, well, screw it. Why don't we make a movie anyway? Let's go and make a $10,000 movie. You know, let's do a found footage movie, or let's do, you know, something that won't cost a lot of money. And the easiest way to make a movie without a lot of money is to do a minimal cast in a single location. And so that's why movies like the original Saw could be made for so cheap, because majority of the film is Cary Elwes and the other guy, I think it's Lee Wanell is the other guy in that movie, and they're in one room for, I'd say, 75% of that movie. And the other 25% is, I think, Danny Glover chasing people around and stuff. I haven't seen the original Saw in probably 15 years, but, you know, most of that movie takes place in one room with two actors, and that's how they were able to make it for $1 million. So, you know, that was the goal here, was we want an isolated location because it's cheaper and it helps develop atmosphere. And we wanted a small cast. So the thought was, let's incorporate, you know, this man and woman who are the brother and sister from the beginning of the movie, and they each have their respective significant others. And then we can, you know, or in this case, obviously, Ashley does not have a significant other. But what happens to them after their parents are murdered? Well, they're going to be put into a foster system, so they're going to have a foster family, and so they're meeting their foster sister and her husband, who are moving back from California to the Midwest because they want to be closer to family because she's having a baby. And a lot of that is left out of the movie because the new edit of the Rake unfortunately removes a lot of the description that is given earlier in the film that helps explain who these people are and what's happening and why they're doing what they're doing. But that's really what that is. That's where the premise of the Rake comes from, is the desire to maintain a small budget. And a lot of independent horror movies do that. That's why most independent horror movies take place in a cabin in the woods with 4 teenagers, because most filmmakers can make a movie at a cabin in the woods for $5,000, and 20-year-old actors are looking for their big breaks. They're willing to work for free.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and this you might have answered a little bit of this next question, Tony, and that is when we were watching the film of the Rake. We noticed at the beginning we had the little small daughter and son and sister brother sort of deal, and then as the movie goes on, they've grown up, and now the one thing that kind of confused me, and I just wanted to see if you could maybe help me out on this, is how was Nicole sister to Ben and Ashley?
So when Ben and I and my co-producers, like Rob Stern, who was my cinematographer and helped come up with some of the story points and stuff, when we had originally discussed a lot of the concepts, the idea was that the opening of the movie was the family, psychiatrist, father, 2 kids. The killer breaks into the house, kills the parents, kills himself in front of the kids, and then after he collapses on the floor dead, you've got, all of a sudden you hear the sound of him transforming into the Rake, and you see the kids' faces looking in awe and terror at this creature being born out of this man's dead body, but you don't see it. You just start to hear it, and then it cuts to the title, The Rake. And then, you see the terror in their faces, and then it cuts to the Rake, and you're wondering, well, what the hell was that? What's happening? And then the opening title sequence was going to be very much like Seven, where it's all these little snippets from newspapers and clippings from different things, journal entries from both the dad, the psychiatrist's dad. Meanwhile, there would be music, potentially some of the tape recording audio of the dad kind of talking about how the killer, Jacob Murphy, had, fantasized about this creature, the Rake, that he says, and a lot of that was taken out of the movie. We did not get a chance to do our opening credit sequence. And then there are a number of scenes where in the beginning of the movie, when the dad is watching the videotaping of the killer talking about the Rake, a lot of the description of the Rake was removed. A lot of, pretty much all the details about how Jacob Murphy, the killer, had seen the Rake come from his mother initially, and that's how it infected him, was through his mother killing herself. And then it infected him, and then when he kills himself, it infects Ben and Ashley, the characters from the movie. All of that was removed from the movie to shore up some time, and then after the opening title sequence, where you learn a little bit about the connective tissue between Ben and Ashley being adopted by this man, this wealthy man, and his wife, and his wife has I guess has passed away, and he has a daughter, and he doesn't want his daughter to be alone, so he adopts Ben and Ashley to fill the void that his wife left when she passed away, so that his daughter would have someone to play with and help alleviate the pain of losing her mother. And so that's a lot of that was supposed to be in this opening title sequence. And then you come in 20 years later, and we have Nicole, who's their foster sibling, driving through the Midwest to their new house with her husband. And then there's this moment where she's looking through old photos and sees a picture of Ben and Ashley and her, in this, this old armchair that her brother Ben then brings to the house, and she's like, "Oh, I can't believe you held on to Dad's old chair." And it's like a lot of that is lost because you don't get any of that backstory in the edit. And that's really, it's again, the unfortunate side effect of working with a team of people that sometimes don't always get along and don't always agree on their decisions. And it is what it is. That's part of the Hollywood process. There are plenty of directors who, as Ben said, the story is written is told 3 different times throughout the process of making a movie, and that's why a lot of screenwriters hate majority of the films that are based off of their scripts. Stephen King often said, I mean, Ben is probably smarter at knowing this fact than I do, but I think Stephen King said once that there was, pretty much 90% of the movies that were made off of his books, he hated because they bastardized his story. And, one of the biggest examples was the original Shining. He hated Kubrick's Shining. And whereas I love that movie, I can understand his problem with it in that, a lot of his story, a lot of his character development, a lot of the tension that he built in the book was removed. And so, that happens all the time. And it's something you just have to deal with. So that's pretty much what happened there. But a lot of that ended up causing it to be difficult to understand, and that's a lot of the criticism that the Rake gets, is that people have no idea what's going on, and they have no idea how these characters are related to one another. And there was one scene in particular where the first night that Ashley comes to the house and visits with Nicole and her husband Andrew. Nicole and Andrew get into a little bit of a fight, where they're sitting and eating pizza, and Ashley is eating an apple, if you remember that scene, and they're drinking wine, and Ashley and Andrew kind of get into a little sparring match. And after that, there's this sequence where they're in bed together, Nicole and her husband Andrew, and she's kind of pissed off at him because he's giving Ashley shit, even though Ashley's kind of the one giving him shit. And Nicole's like, I really want to salvage my relationship with my sister because she's important to me. She's the only family I have left because my father's passed away. And Andrew tries to relate to that and tries to explain to her, that he understands and that he, that he's here for her. And she's expressing how important it is that her baby gets to know her brother and sister, because even though they're not blood related, she considers them her brother and sister. And the LA team removed all that because they wanted to hide the pregnancy until the dinner conversation, when they're all sitting around having sushi or having Chinese food for dinner, looking at photographs, and Nicole tells everybody, "Hey, by the way, I'm pregnant." And it's a cool reveal, but by doing that, you not only remove a lot of the reasoning for why the Rake is there in the first place, infecting these people, because it wants the youth and innocence of this child that's unborn, but also that removed a
Why is that a cool? Why was that a cool reveal? I never understood that. Who cares? Somebody's pregnant.
I don't know.
Move on.
I don't know.
Sorry,
but
get me
you.
Sorry. Can we move on from this movie? This.
Ben's not very happy with how the Rake turned out, as you can tell.
Hey, you know what? Get me on my own, and I'll give you a fucking great podcast. But I don't want to tarnish Tony's reputation, because unlike Tony, I can say whatever I want about this. And yeah, my opinions. I don't dislike the movie. I just dislike the people that we made it with.
Well, ultimately,
that's the problem.
Ultimately, it's all getting back to the original point of the question is just that, you would have gotten a lot more explanation, but no time was put into finessing the explanation so that you would get that understanding for the audience. It was rushed to be completed, and so a lot of that stuff was left on the cutting room floor or never incorporated in the first place. And if we would have had the opportunity to make the title sequence that we wanted, you would have understood that a lot better. And instead you have literally, I'd say, 2 moments in the entire movie where the characters briefly hint upon the fact that Nicole is their sister, but is not actually their blood sister. Because a lot of the reviewers who review the movie say, these 3 siblings, but where was the third sibling? Where was the third sister, at the beginning of the movie? And it's like, well, she wasn't their sister. And Andrew specifically says that to her when Rachel, or when Nicole and Andrew are waiting for everybody to show up for the party, and Ashley is sitting outside in the backyard smoking her cigarette, and she sees the naked woman for the first time, the naked version of herself. And, she's like, and Nicole is pissed off at her husband Andrew because he's trying to get her to like stop concerning herself with her sick sister. And she's like, well, she's my sister. And he's like, well, no, she isn't. And she gets mad and storms away at him from him. And I think that people look at that and like, well, wait a minute, how is she not her sister? I thought she was her sister. And if you knew that she was her foster sister, that would make more sense. But it's never truly explained in the movie. And we were never really given an opportunity to review the final cut of the film and say, you know, these things are not explained well enough. Will you please help us explain them better? You know, so, but again, that's to be diplomatic, which, you know, that's how it is. That's how the industry is, unfortunately. And so there's a good and a bad to being independent in this industry. So, but that, you know, let's talk about Skeletons. You know, that's what Ben and I collaborated on 100%. And, you know, you guys had a chance to watch that too. So,
well, my last question for the Rake, and which is, and it's a simple one, is: are we gonna ever maybe possibly see a sequel to help answer the question, or if not more, tell more of the story that we kind of saw?
We had discussed creating a franchise. The initial goal of the partnership to create that film with our team in LA, our producing partners, was to create a franchise. They were very interested in turning this into an Insidious or Conjuring franchise, and actually had originally Paradigm, which is a very big sales agency and talent agency. It's one of the major agencies in LA, was representing the Rake. And we were very excited about that because, you know, they helped sell Paranormal Activity and Insidious. And so we thought, you know, this is going to be a tremendous feather in the cap, and it's going to get out there and do a lot of amazing things. And I think that after the experience on the movie was, you know, not a good one on either side of the coin, that the partnership just kind of was left at that film as a one-trick pony, and we're all kind of moving on to do our own things separately. And so, you know, unfortunately, as a result, the franchise potential is owned by the company, and the company is owned between the two different partnerships. So I don't see us ever creating something together again, and I don't see either side relinquishing control for anything less than a large chunk of change if there was talks of a sequel being made. And, you know, it's unfortunate. I'm very proud of what the Rake accomplished in terms of it being a feature-length movie, you know, with some really great effects work in it. I think that the team of people that I worked with to make it did a really great job of building wonderful production design, beautiful cinematography and lighting. It was a real awesome crash course for a lot of our crew to learn how to do their jobs better, to hone their skills in a professional setting. But, you know, unfortunately, the Rake did not do what I hoped it would do for my career. And that's yet to be determined. It could get a following. It's just hard. This industry has been, the genre in particular, has been overflown with a lot of independent horror movies, you know, and it's to the point where everybody with a camera who's a horror fan wants to make a scary movie. And as a result, there's so much stuff out there that it's hard to find stuff. And, you know, I appreciate that you guys enjoyed our movies, but there are so many people out there who won't even bother watching it because they don't know it exists, or they're tired of flipping through 300 movies on Comcast or, you know, their whatever, or Amazon in order to get to the Rake. And then once they get to the Rake, they may not like the poster design, or they may watch the trailer and say, that looks stupid. Or they watch the first 10 minutes and think it's stupid, and then they turn it off. You know, it's not like the old days where we would rent a videotape from the video store and then you're forced to watch it because you paid $3.25 for it and you got it for 2 days, so you might as well watch the whole thing. It's just a different industry.
Yes, unfortunately, I kind of missed the blockbuster days. But anyway, like Ben said, let's move on from the movies here. Ben, is there actually any final thing you want to say real quick about the Rake, or do you just want to move on?
Well, I would like it if I don't think this is ever going to happen, but Tony and I have talked about it in the past. I'm going to continue to pressure Tony about this until I'm dead. But I would very much like it if we could revisit our version of the movie and release what would commonly be known as a director's cut sometime in the future. Because, like I said, it's a completely different experience. It's I don't think the current version of the movie is particularly scary. I think our version was, and like Tony said, the current version of the film is missing a lot of that character development that was so important to the original screenplay. And he's absolutely right. It's confusing the way they put it together. And they sacrificed a lot of that character development so in the second act we could find out that Rachel Melvin's pregnant. It was serious move. But I'm not angry about the movie. I got paid very well on that to go the fuck away, so I really can't complain. I may have actually been the highest paid person on that set. For second, I have really no reason to complain, but I do agree with Tony that they radically altered that film, and I don't think it was particularly for the positive. But once again, that is the industry that we find ourselves in. So.
Yeah. Now, man, you just made me think of it now. Since we're talking about director's cut and stuff, and I swear this is the last Rake question I can think of, and it is now. What was the original length of your guys' version before we got what we got?
Well, it's not length you really have to be concerned about. It's the amount of scenes that were cut. And Tony keyed in on this earlier. The thing that's really missing from the Rake are all the terror that we brought to it. And in the current version of the movie, at least from my vantage point, I don't particularly care about any of the characters. I hate to say that, but I don't. In the original version that Jeremy Silva and Tony Walsh wrote, one of the reasons I was so interested in the movie was because they wrote very compelling characters. There's a lot of interesting dynamic relationships, and the performances were tremendous. That's the other thing that we haven't really talked about. They gutted. The new editorial team gutted some amazing performances that you just don't see in this version. And I'm sure Tony can talk more about this, but that's another thing that was lost that we haven't even gotten into.
Well, I don't want to keep, I guess, burying
beat a dead horse.
Yeah, beat a dead horse. But maybe we can learn more next time. When you guys, if you want to come back on. But anyway, let's move on to talk about skeletons. So that way Ben doesn't get more pissed off about the creation of the Rake that we got. So, and I think Tony is looking forward to talking about the skeletons anyway. So, right into skeletons.
Did old school Tales from the Crypt and Creepshow inspire skeletons in the closet for you guys?
I don't know. Tony, you want to take that one? It came from two places. I don't know if Tony talked to you about this, but Skeletons was at one point a different anthology film called Chop Shop. That's how Tony and I met.
Yeah.
And then over time, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of this story because we told it so many times. But over time, it morphed into this. So you had basically two versions of what the anthology film would be. You had mine, which was dirtier and grittier, and then you had Tony's, which was set in the 80s, which I actually think benefits the movie in a lot of ways because you're getting the perspective of two different filmmakers in one anthology film.
Yeah, we originally Chop Shop was originally with two other directors besides Ben and myself, and each film, even though they were all shot by Rob Stern, who also shot The Rake, each film still had its own specific visual feel and tone to it, And so that's why Ben's movie in Chop Shop, which is the two robbers in the junkyard dismantler, and my film Grandma O'Malley's Pantry with the little girl who goes to stay with her grandma, that's why those two movies look so different. And then basically, Ben, do you want to give them the history of Chop Shop, and then that can lead into where Skeletons in the Closet actually comes from?
Yeah, so in 2012, when I was on vacation in LA, I called Tony and said, "Hey, we never met before. I don't know you from Adam, but I know that you are a horror junkie and you get projects done. So I want to put together a 4, or actually at that time, 5-man anthology team." I pitched it to Tony, and for whatever reason, he's like, "All right, let's do it." And interestingly enough, from that conversation, which may have been mid-March, Tony was shooting Grandma O Memorial Day weekend, 8-9 weeks later. I mean, we were up and running that fast. And then over time, we lost 2 of the other filmmakers and their films. Their films were completed as well. And then the movie just sat on the shelf for a while as we moved to different projects. Tony went into Hog. I went into God knows what. Then, of course, Rake happened. And then towards the end of 2015 is when we started getting the bug to finish that movie, because Tony and I were kind of screwed because our movies were so tied together narratively. We couldn't just release them. They had to go together, and we had to find a vehicle in order to release them. And it wasn't going to be, we're not going to release a 40-minute film. We had to put it together in a feature infrastructure. And what's interesting is that Tony actually pitched me SITC back at that original meeting, 2012. So he brought it back. And then just one thing led to another, and in 2016 we were shooting.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, we had these 2 short films that were each about 25 minutes long, and we had worked on these other projects. Ben and I were also doing World of Death, which is our web series that we curate through bloodydisgusting.com. And so after all this time, we still had these 2 short films just kind of sitting on the shelf, and we're like, we need to get these done. We need to show these to people. And the best way to make them marketable is to make a feature out of them. So if we've got 50 minutes, and then we also incorporated Rian Owen's short film, which is called Meisner, where it's the actress tied to the chair in the basement. We thought, okay, we've got 55 minutes of content. We have this wraparound stuff, which is the first-person point of view of the guy being processed through purgatory, which kind of ties Ben's and my short films together. And Rian, who is the director of Meisner, who's also the actress in Meisner, also happened to be that body that's kind of cut in half in the camper in the purgatory section. So it just all kind of like tied together okay. And we said, well, let's take this. And I think that might have actually been Rob's idea to incorporate Meisner. And so we just said, well, why don't we take this 65 minutes worth of content that we have, and all we have to do is create a wraparound to tie it all together. And since college, so it's been about 20 years now, I've had this idea in my head to do a show called Skeletons in the Closet, where you basically take Elvira and the Crypt Keeper and put them together. Because most horror host shows are either a host like Joe Bob Briggs, or Gilbert Gottfried with Up All Night, or a hostess like Elvira or any of the other plethora of, offshoots. And so I never really thought there was much of a dynamic between multiple hosts. And so I thought that if Elvira was married to the Crypt Keeper and she's the reason he's dead, which would then give them kind of a Peg and Al Bundy, dynamic where they're constantly bickering at each other and stuff, that it would make it a lot of fun. And so I pitched it to Ben in 2016, and he liked the idea. We went and pitched it to Rob and some of the rest of our crew, to try and get the thing made. And we were shooting early 2017, all the stuff with the babysitter and the little girl, and all the stuff with the widow and Charlie. And, premiered it last September, and just really happy that it all came together.
Yeah, you were mentioning that this one actually was edited a little bit faster than the Rake did, and I mean, it sounds like you guys had a smoother team than the Rake did, um, and I guess it sounds like also everybody knew what they were doing, especially having, if I remember correctly, with the credit, different directors. Like Ben directed the Junkyard one, and you directed quite a few too, Tony. But it seems like also with that in mind, with different directors, per se, is like I was trying to say earlier, where or maybe it was off the air or something. But if just in case it was off the air, is at least now you could film a certain scene, right, and then have Ben or whoever edit it together, so that way when it came time to, I believe, like what Ben said with the whole 40-minute thing to make it a full length, at least when it came down to make that full length thing to place all the pieces together, it was already prepared. So yeah, I give you guys props for sure. And for what was it? Five. Let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have like 7 shorts, I believe, plus the babysitter one.
No, there's 6 altogether.
6. Okay.
Yeah. And it ultimately boils down to the fact that Ben and I just work well together. I mean, he may not agree with what I say there, but you know, he is very good at taking stuff and editing things together, and you know, we are both very good at coming up with good ideas, whether it be at the script level, or while we're on production or in post production. And we're also really good friends, so we don't really I don't think that we step on each other's toes very often. And I'm hoping that, you know, there's no jealousy or anything in there, because that's why we work so well together, because we're able to work together. It's not like, well, it's me or him. It's both of us. You know, and you know, like with this, I talked to you guys about getting on the podcast and recording, and then I asked Ben if he wanted to be a part of it. You know, it's not like I'm gonna go and do one on my own because I don't want him to be involved. He's my co-director, so I want him to be able to, you know, discuss some stories from the movie as well. And that's key. That's the key to a successful movie, in my opinion, is when the people who made it are completely on the same page as one another and their talents gel well together. If you have any conflicts creatively or in any other respect on a film in particular, because a film is one of the only art forms where you have multiple artists creating in conjunction with one another, it can fall apart. It can be a clusterfuck, you know?
Or at the very least, you have to be willing to compromise. We didn't really have to compromise on anything. We just kind of threw shit at the wall, and most of it stuck. I mean, we had a couple of bad ideas once in a while, but and to your point earlier, Paul, I see where you were going with that. But let me tell you something interesting about how movies work. You can have a plan on paper, and we actually build post-production plans. I mean, there's a great picture that Tony put up on Instagram when I pitched everybody in Jim Peterson, who works on these films too, in his living room. I built the High on the Hog editorial infrastructure on Post-it notes on this big board. And the point I'm trying to make is that we had all that laid out, but once you start putting the movie together, it doesn't really matter, because new ideas are going to come to surface. And I'll give you a great point. When I was putting Skeletons in the Closet together, and I showed Tony like the first 2 or 3 minutes, and he loved it. This is the stuff in the living room with Jamie and Tina. And I said to Tony, I'm like, something's missing, and I don't know what it is. So I went back home, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give the television a voice. And that's where Channel 13 comes up. That was never written. That basically was created on the fly, because when Liz gets to the living room Jamie ignores her. Sorry, Liz is the actress. I always speak with the actress names and not the character names. And then she goes to the couch, and if you pay attention, there's about 30 seconds there when nothing happens. And I don't like dull space. I like to cut and keep things moving. And I'm like, all right, we need something here. And that thing was a stupid guy on a stupid television, which incidentally, that idea actually stemmed from Tony's short film, The Muck. I wanted the radio to have a voice. Because once again, there was dead space. But obviously Tony didn't need it, and that movie was successful enough. But anyway, that's the point I'm trying to make is no matter how prepared you are, be prepared to make adjustments on the fly. And that's what we do exceptionally well. When you see Hog, we did a lot of that in there. We were winging shit left and fucking right. And it works for the most part.
God, remember, Ben and I have had plenty of, as I said earlier with the Rake, these editing sessions where we'll get together for like a week, 4 to 6, 7 days, and we'll just hang out. We'll edit during the day, and then at night we'll have we'll watch a bunch of shitty movies. That's where our bizarre love for the 80s action film Cobra came from, as well as our weird ass love for 80s aerobics horror films. And so during these processes, we'll do this stuff, and he'll be editing, and he'll show me stuff, or we'll be working on something together, and it's just really cool ideas will happen. Like, I mean, remember, Ben, when we were up at my dad's place in Wisconsin and we were editing High on the Hog, and the whole the scene from the song from Cruisin'.
Shakedown.
Remember when we were a Shakedown? Yeah, we were when that scene, just the way it came together, and we were just like cracking up because it's like, oh, why don't you do this? How about you do this? How about we do this? And then all of a sudden, it like you hit play and you let it render through, and it plays, and then it just like works out perfectly. And it's just really cool how the collaborative process is between the two of us.
I think like that are written. They're not scripted. I mean, most of the stuff that we did on Rake wasn't scripted at all. It was just, like I said, actually I didn't say this in this podcast. I said this in yesterday's podcast. Most of film editing, in all honesty, it's just experimentation. That's really all it is. There's no prescribed way to do anything. I mean, there are in studio movies, that's for certain. Studio movies are basically edited via computer algorithm, especially when you have multiple effect shots in one movie. But at an independent level, that's the nice thing. There's a lot more freedom. And as you can see, then the freedom gets taken away, but,
Well, and that's what really the answer to the question is, that you asked earlier, Paul, is that, Skeletons in the Closet was 100% independent from start to finish. We, Ben, Rob, and I were the three people who were kind of the force behind that film getting created and getting completed. And so outside of our opinions, others were just suggestive at that point. And so we were able to really do what we wanted. And when we set up our distribution deal with Cow Lamb Films, we went to them and said, look, there are a handful of things that we are very, particular about, and there are a lot of things that we could care less about. So if you want to make a deal with us, these are things that have to be done, and these are things that don't have to be done. And they were nice enough to be willing to work with our desires to make a symbiotic relationship. And that's really the key, is just, making sure that everybody's on the same page and that everybody respects one another. Because if you start disrespecting one another, then feelings get hurt, and ultimately the product suffers.
That is true. And yeah, I mean, I can at least vouch a little bit, not like to shine on your parade or anything, but I do remember when I was helping a friend of mine with his independent film that I starred in for the last tale of his little anthology thing that he was doing. I remember he gave us so much freedom to do whatever because it was found footage, and it does help when you don't have the if I may say, big names or big corporates interfering with the small guys anyway, like we kind of discussed with the Rake. But yeah, I mean, I give you guys respect no matter what with what you guys have done with Skeletons. And for something that you were saying was experimental. I think you guys just need to experiment a little bit more because I think you guys are on to something. So, congrats on that. I give you props.
Well, thank you. That's much appreciated. And, again, I think that a large chunk of that needs to go, towards Ben. He
Yes, Ben, good job.
single-handedly. What?
I said, yes, Ben, good job.
Yeah. I think Ben, is able to, again, take footage and piece it together in a unique and entertaining format. And I think that that's a really, unique talent that not a lot of people possess. And Skeletons in the Closet is a prime example of somebody saying, you know what, I'm not going to stick to the cookie cutter method. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to do something crazy and different. And I think it works. I love Skeletons in the Closet. It's such a fun movie. And, people think it's confusing, and I understand that. There's 6 short films in it. But, our ultimate goal has been to turn it into either a sequel or to do a television series. And either of those ways of taking this project to the next level, we would only involve 1 short film that they're watching instead of 4. So you've got the babysitter and the little girl, although the babysitter would not be a reoccurring character for obvious reasons, not giving anything away. The widow and Charlie, and then whatever they're watching, And I'm currently trying to convince Ben of one particular way of taking the story. So we'll see what ends up happening in the future. But at that point, then it'd be a lot less confusing. You'd have more time spent with the widow and Charlie and with Jamie. And the short film could also be a little more detailed out. If you can if we were doing a sequel, you make a 55-minute short film, and that way you can tell a nice story in 55 minutes instead of having to rush through it in 15 or 20.
So, Ben, I think you kind of answered this already, but I'll ask this question anyways. The idea behind having two hosts instead of one, what made you guys decide to do that? And what was the inspiration for the wardrobe and Charlie's mask?
Oh, that's really more of a question for Tony and
Tony, can you indulge me in an answer?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, like I said earlier, I'd never seen a dual host dynamic on a horror show before. It's always either a guy or a girl. And so I wanted to just combine the two of them. There's really nothing special about it. It's just, let's have Elvira get married to the Crypt Keeper and make a show off of it. And then, I had the idea of them, her killing him and keeping his body in the basement, kind of like Norman Bates does with his mother's corpse. And, every episode I had this whole different opening sequence to the show created where she comes home from work, slips into something comfortable, pours a glass of red wine for herself, and goes down to the basement. And it's this whole setup. And she gets down there with these tapes, and, we see her husband, and, it kind of goes into the show. And, I don't know. It was just an idea that I thought was a lot of fun to just have that dynamic set. That way that, every horror host show, they basically talk to the audience. They break the fourth wall. And though I don't feel like that's something that should be removed, and that's why we removed it in this case, because somebody actually mentioned they like the idea of Jamie, the little girl, breaking the fourth wall. And I think that that's actually a really cool concept. So the idea would be maybe that Jamie, if we were to do future things, would break the fourth wall and talk to the audience. But with the widow and Charlie, other than when the widow gives her kind of send-off at the end of the episode to all of her little monsters out there in TV land, she's really not talking to the audience. And that's why I wanted to add another character so that she can converse with somebody else about what they're watching instead of just giving out these one-liners, kind of like what horror hosts typically do. And then in regards to the look, it was actually our co-writer, Johnny Hulusik, who had said, Well, I think it'd be funny if Charlie doesn't move at all. Like he's sitting in one spot and he can move his head back and forth, but from the neck down, he's paralyzed because he's a corpse. And I'm like, that's actually a really funny idea because not only does it prevent the actor from being able to act with his body, but it really does prevent Charlie from ever escaping the basement, you know? And so that's kind of where that came from. Both Ellie Church and Adam Michaels, who play the widow and Charlie, went to thrift stores and picked out their outfits. And I had done a lot of audition rehearsal work and stuff via Skype with each of them. So I remember Ellie had sent me a couple of different photos from the changing room at the Goodwill of different outfits that she thought would work. And we ultimately picked the white one. And with Charlie, Adam found that suit and he had a pair of dress shoes that he really liked. And he's like, can I do this? And I said, that's great. And Jason Kane, again, sculpted the mask, which is a silicone mask that is built off of a life cast from Adam Michaels so that when you put it over his head, it fits to his face perfectly so that when he moves his mouth and jaw, it moves as well. And then we did some really quick little cotton latex buildup on some surgical gloves for Charlie's hands. And that's pretty much all it is. You know, we put a dead contact in one of his eyes and blended the edges a little around his eyes and his mouth. And then Tiffany was our hair and makeup girl, and she'd made the widow all sexy. Our wardrobe and production design team, Angela and Sarah, did a really nice job of finding like some of the little pieces, like the widow's necklace and those foofy slippers that she's wearing that go really well with her kind of baby doll outfit. And so, you know, it all comes together. And again, it all boils down to a symbiotic relationship between the creative people that are in charge. You know, if you respect each respective department and the person who's running that department, and know that each department needs proper amount of time and money to create quality work, then the project as a whole is going to, you know, benefit from that. And it's something that new, younger independent filmmakers ask me all the time. They're like, well, you know, what's advice you can give me? And it's take the time to do it right. Don't half-ass it. You know, you're going to make a movie in the woods? Great. Awesome. Make a fucking horror movie in the woods. But don't just throw somebody out there with a paper bag over their head chasing people with a butcher knife. You know, put some production design into what the killer looks like. Give them a unique weapon. You know, if they're going to have a mask on, make it unique. Don't just fucking half-ass it, because that's what makes it stand out in people's minds. And that's what helps separate a low-budget movie from a good low-budget movie, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Ben, you've been kind of quiet. Is there anything you'd like to add so far that we've been talking about? Is there anything that you'd like to shine in on, or is there any type of experience you'd like to share real quick? I don't want to have you keeping quiet over there, so feel free to speak up. Anything?
Oh, no, it's okay. I'm actually working while we do this.
Okay. You're multitasking.
Oh yeah, never a dull moment on my desk. Yep. No. Just keep going. I actually like listening. If I do the job I do, I hide in the shadows.
Okay.
Ben edits in his sleep. He's nonstop.
Each story told something unique. What inspired each tale as it was told?
Ben, you take this one.
You know what? Tony talked about this before. Smatzler basically came from, I needed cheap production design. That's really what it comes down to. I needed production design built in to the movie so I didn't have to do much, because Smatzler was shot so quickly. I mean, we shot that movie for, I told you how much, you'd be astounded. It was done very, very quickly, although it was done over the course of a year and a half. If you notice carefully, you can actually see the breath from several of the actors. which actually works out to her advantage because once Steve flips on Tony in the movie and becomes, or at least you know he's evil at that point, you start to see his breath. So that was actually a happy accident. But we made that from summer 12 to winter 2013. It was not an easy shoot, but when we were shooting, we had to move very, very quickly. And that's basically why that film is set there. I always wanted to shoot a movie in the junkyard, but that wasn't enough. I knew I needed to get cheap production design already built into the location, and what better place to do it in a junkyard. The only thing that we had to quote-unquote build for Dismantler anyway was the tunnel where Steve LeBed gets shot by Tony LeGratz, made of tires. I actually built that, interestingly enough, with another filmmaker, John Potter, the editor of Gags. Other than that, that's all we really had to build. The rest of it was just sitting there for us. And, junkyards are naturally very spooky and ominous, especially the one we were in, because it was very private. And it was, for lack of a better term, it was a scary setting. So that's where that originated from. Tony's is a little bit different, I think.
Well, Grandma O'Malley's in particular?
Yeah.
Well, so Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, honestly, I don't even know where I came up with that idea. I had, after my first movie, It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, the next film I was going to do was an anthology, coincidentally enough, called Sweet Dreams. And it had 4 shorts in it, one of which was the wraparound. And so Grandma O'Malley's was one of them. And I don't remember where I came up with the idea originally, but it might have been that my old producing partner, Chris Patrick, who I worked on It's My Party with, and a couple other films, including A Chance in Hell, he had a really old house in Pittsburgh that he had bought right after we graduated from Savini School because he got a job teaching at the school. So he was setting up shop and living in that area and had this old house. And I think that house might have inspired me a little bit because it just looked like the house that a grandma would live in, but it was still creepy. So I kind of started going that route. So that story, I created that story in probably 2005, 2006. And then I actually read something the other day. I was going through my old stories and stuff, and I saw that I was finishing writing it in like 2008, 2009. And so I just always had it as something, and it's probably my favorite thing that I've ever written. And so when Ben came to me in 2012 and said, I want to do this anthology, so all you have to do is produce a short film. I was like, well, fuck yeah, let's do this, because all I got to do is find a house and, a couple actors, and I can make this movie. And so, the inspiration was just telling a story, like I said earlier, from the child's perspective. I think that horror is so much more effective when you see it from a child's perspective. And that's the entire point of that. So, and then with Meisner, that was originally a concept that I'd had where in college, I wanted to write a story called Stolen that was about a woman who wakes up in a basement tied to a chair with a video camera in front of her. Because this was right when, like, home video cameras were starting to become a little more accessible. And it was right after I came up with the idea in college. It was creative writing class, so probably 2000, 2001. So it was right after Blair Witch and St. Francisville Experiment and all those offshoots. And so I wanted to do this movie where we're watching this girl wake up from the eye of a camcorder and realizing that she's in the basement of a serial killer. She is, oh my God, 5 other women from the area have been taken and have been found murdered. I must be his 6th victim. What do I remember last? How do I get out of here? And it's just like her processing this situation. And then I kind of evolved it to where, well, what if it turns out that she's actually just an actress and it's all fake and she's actually just recording a audition tape for a movie that she's trying out for a role for. And I thought that was kind of a cool twist. So that's kind of how that idea went from there. And then at the time I was dating Rian, who directed the short, and she wanted to direct something. So I kind of gave her that idea, and she thought it was really cool and thought it would be, we thought it would be a great concept for her to be the first thing that she would direct, as well as be able to act in it, because she is an actress and wanted to promote her acting abilities. So that's what we did. We produced it as a little 5-minute short film, and we're originally going to include it in World of Death, but it kind of sat on the back burner for a number of years once we shot it, just like our Ben's and my shorts did. And so ultimately I think Rob is the one who suggested we throw it in as well, just so that Skeletons in the Closet would kind of be this mixed bag of old projects that we have to just get out and air out to the public. And so we did it. And, I think it's great. I think it turned out good. And then, I kind of already explained the Skeletons inspiration. And then with the little girl and the babysitter, that's all of us. I mean, when I was a little kid, my grandma was a big horror fan. So I used to, when I would be babysat by her, I remember vividly even being 4 or 5 years old, sitting on the floor in her living room in front of the big wooden television watching Tales from the Dark Side, the TV show, with her and stuff like that. And so that's all Jamie is. It's just a representation of me and every other horror fan when we were kids growing up in the 70s and 80s, watching these movies and, these horror hosts on TV and falling in love with the genre that we've grown to, embrace in our lives.
Wow. I mean, for just listening to you, it's just like, it's almost like it's an inspiring piece, as I may say. Like, I don't really know what else I can really say to that, except for, like, that's incredible. And, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of lost for word right now after listening to that. It's always nice to hear how things are made, especially for, even if it's not an anthology, it's just, like,
how things come together.
yeah, it's just always that cool thing of like, well, this is what I was doing or watching or reading or whatever and listening to, and I just got this idea in my brain and just had to jot it down, and it just came to life after that. And I mean, that's the way
they never come together in a straight line, that's for certain.
No.
Well,
never. And blown up.
And you got to think about, like, I'm sure Ben is the same way. Like, I've got hundreds of ideas that will never come to fruition, and some of them are absolutely asinine. But I don't do it as much as I used to. But I used to I'd write everything down. I'd write down a saying. If I had a funny saying that I thought a character could say at some point in a movie, I would say photos of houses or of production design elements that I really liked a lot, and that way I could either use it as a reference for inspiration for my art director or production designer, or potentially even go and find that location to shoot in. So you never know what ideas are going to come to fruition and what aren't, and you just, when you're an artist, you just have to kind of go with the flow, and a lot of times your brain takes you to weird places. And so it can definitely, it's totally a good thing. I mean, look at all the fucked up shit that's out there because some artists just thought of a fucked up idea and made it come to fruition.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. And I mean, that's why we have stuff like Unearthed Films. Oh my God, that crap is like, or not crap, but like, and it's crap in a good way, but that crap is normally what you wouldn't really see because Unearthed Film just takes it to a whole new level with some of the movies they produce. But yeah, exactly. There's a lot of fucked up shit out there, and I mean, some of it you kind of go, what the fuck am I watching half the time too? So yeah.
We've had to watch. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's leaving people up to their creative freedoms. If someone's willing to spend the money to make a movie, so that they don't have to answer to anybody else because they're the one whose money's in it. They technically own the movie. They can do whatever the fuck they want. And then it's just a matter of finding the right audience to appeal to with that project. And there is an audience for literally everything. You will find someone who says that your movie is the best movie ever made, and you will find someone who says that your movie is the worst movie ever made. And that is a guaranteed fact for every filmmaker out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, and I'm just trying to think now. I know when I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess when I really watched, besides the Widow and Charlie and the babysitter stories, and especially Charlie's little comedy line that he got going on, like, yeah, you want some of this shit, like that. And then what the other like ridiculously weird line that Charlie said to the Widow, or the Widow said to Charlie, like, what did Charlie say about her murdering him? That was the good one.
I'm trying to remember exactly how it went.
At least you had the balls to kill me or murder me twice. I forget now. I would have to watch it again. But yeah,
when she goes to get the popcorn, she's like, "Don't start the movie without me," and he's like, "Of course not. Wouldn't want you to kill me again." You know, yeah. Hey, our co-writer Johnny Halusik did an awesome job of bringing those characters to life. You know, we had discussed what we were going to do with it, and then in terms of, Ben and I discussed, okay, this is going to be the production. We're going to have this story, and we're going to do the story of the babysitter. And then I got in touch with Johnny and was just like, hey, are you interested in helping bring these characters to life? And he really enjoyed the concept, and so yeah, he just kind of went with it and ran. And I think he has some really fun little quips in there.
I definitely agree, and this can go for both Ben and Tony. Me and Tessa were noticing, I believe it was the second playthrough, is that your dismantler there, Ben, was tying into the grandma. It's like grandma was tying into the chop shop. So I guess, were you guys at all discussion about how it linked in together, or was this a coincidence?
Tony and I didn't become conscious of that until we wrapped those movies. Once we got into putting what used to be the old bridge, which is the stuff in the camper, we started to draft the connections between the characters. That's why you see the flashback in the kitchen. Those were done in the first phase of pickups. So to answer your question, when we first put those movies together, no, there was no connective tissue until later. And then we started to layer, and this is how we make movies. We started to layer narrative on top of layer on top of layer, and that's why Skeletons is such a complicated narrative. Although, like I said before we got started, it forces the audience to have to go back and watch it several times. We did the same thing, although I'm not at liberty to talk about exactly how we did this in On the Hog. When people find out what exactly we did, I guarantee they're going to want to go back and watch it. But like I said, Skeletons is designed to be viewed multiple times, and that's basically what any filmmaker that should be their primary goal. You don't want someone to watch your movie and then instantly just forget about it. Yeah, there's a lot of complex relationships and connective tissues throughout the movie, and they're all over the place. And like I said, you do have to watch it more than once, or you're not going to catch them, because we were very self-conscious of them, but they are very subtle in terms of how they're introduced.
Tony, is there anything you'd like to add, or did Ben pretty much nail it?
Yeah, I mean, we had originally done the camper first-person perspective stuff where the guy's going through purgatory as a way to tie together all four of the films that were originally in Chop Shop, including the other two from the other filmmakers. And so there was even a little more connective tissue there that if you were to see the other two short films, you'd be like, oh, hey, there's that character, or there's that person, or whatever, or that location. But ultimately, Ben's and my movie were directly tied to one another by creating the common bond that we did once we started going that route with the story, and which I don't want to obviously say because it'll ruin it for people who haven't seen the movie. But so that was the nice thing, is that once we separated our films and did our own thing with ours, they still ended up playing off of one another well, despite the fact that you didn't have these other two films with them. So yeah, but Skeletons is it's crazy. It's fun. There's a lot going on. It's hard to pay attention to, and I agree with Ben. My hope is that people enjoy it enough, albeit potentially be confused by it, to where they'll want to go and watch it again. And you guys said you've watched it twice now, and that means the world to us.
3 times.
I appreciate that you enjoyed it. 3 times?
Wow. 3 times.
Yeah, we watched it a couple times. we were
Once again, that's good.
By it. Yeah, we were entertained by it.
Yeah, I think what happened was we watched it twice on the day we were originally going to do the interview, Tony, and then when you accidentally overslept, which is fine, yeah. But yeah, that's what I think what happened, because we watched it and we're just like, oh, fuck it, we got another hour to kill. Let's see what we can find this time. See if we can see anything we missed, like the second time around. So we ended up watching it for the 3rd time, and we're just like trying to sit there figuring out, like, okay, so this ties into this somehow. This got to tie into this, and oh yeah, my brain was like ready to explode by the end of like trying to figure it all out. And I don't think I still even have it all figured out. So yeah, so I probably got to watch it 2 more times again.
I don't even know if we've figured it all out.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Oh, jeez.
Why choose a babysitter story as the main theme to tie together all the other tales?
I think it's because it's bringing it back to creating the familiarity with the audience. My goal with that part of it, and then what Ben and I constructed when we were on set with the actors and the production design, because Ben and I basically did the production design of that family room together. I think we set that up like 3 days before we were shooting that scene or something. I don't remember. I just remember Ben wearing like a lampshade on his head, like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. Remember that, Ben? But so I think that like what we were trying to do is just create that familiarity so that the audience could connect with it. And that's what I feel like most people say when they watch the movie, is like, oh my God, Jamie totally reminded me of me when I was a little boy or a little girl.
Yeah, kind of like the nostalgia. I think that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Nostalgia.
Yeah. So it's that, and it's the connective tissue again. It's being able to give people the opportunity to feel like they're a part of it, And I think that's what the Jamie storyline really is. All of us diehard horror fans love the genre more than anything else. I mean, I seriously love horror more than anything else that I'm interested in my life, more than cars or working out or certain types of food or sports. Horror is my bag. And so to me, Jamie is just creating that ability for people to relate and say, that's me. That was me when I was a kid, and that's where I came from, and that's why I love the horror industry like I do, because I was doing what she's doing, reading a horror comic, sitting on the floor in front of the TV, on that furry ass shag carpet, waiting for your favorite horror movie to come on, or sneaking downstairs and looking through the stair rails at the TV while your mom and dad watched a movie, or sitting behind the couch without them knowing you were back there. Or, I have friends who went to the drive-in and after the first movie their parents would make them go to sleep, and they would stay sitting up in the back seat and watch the rated R movie. That was the second movie of the night at the drive-in, and that's the type of shit that Jamie's supposed to represent. Just that youth and the innocence of being a youth, and the appreciation and joy that we used to get from being introduced to a new horror film. Because even if it was bad, we still loved it because we were kids and we didn't know any better,
Oh, dude, if it's bad, we still love it as adults.
Well, you and I do, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably one reason why I probably really enjoy Skeletons in the Closet is because of that nostalgia of remembering, oh, my favorite show is on, sit by the TV or whatever, my popcorn and soda pop or whatever was going on when I was a kid, maybe my crayons and markers or whatever, and just have just watch the TV like she did in that one tale and enjoy it. And that tale is really good too. And I mean, it's very clever, I will say. And that's all I'm going to say without saying too much either. So, yes, I like that little nod there as well.
Thanks.
Now, I am a big soundtrack guy, and I'm curious how you guys thought of the music for this film, especially the Skeletons in the Closet theme.
Cool.
Well, I'll let Ben tackle a bunch of the music, but Skeletons in the Closet, the theme song was, are you talking about the theme that plays while Ellie's coming out of the bathroom, or are you talking about the end credits?
I'm talking all of it, even the end credits, where all I hear is "Skeletons in the Closet" or something like that.
So my buddy Vic Vasquez was in an '80s kind of metal band called Cutlass, and they were pretty. I guess they were decently big in the Chicagoland area. And he's always talked to me. I used to be a bartender, and he was one of my friends who would come in every once in a while and sit at the bar with his wife, Karen, and they would always talk to me about the movies and everything. They really thought it was cool that I made movies, and he was like, I would love to contribute. If I can write a song for a movie, if I can do soundtrack work, please let me be a part of what you're doing. And so when we started going down this path of making this 80s movie, he pretty much was eager to be a part of it, and I talked to him about helping me create the theme song for it. And I was very interested in having an 80s style hair metal theme song, very similar to like Rat or Cinderella. And so he was like, dude, that's fucking awesome. I'm totally down. And they went and they ran with it. And then him and his buddy Tim, and they wrote the song, recorded everything for it. And then our buddy Shay Vilwalk mastered it and produced it for him. And along with a lot of the other music in the movie. So, and then most of the composed work is done by DC McAuliffe, who is Ben's and my go-to composer in the Chicagoland area. He's pretty much done music for majority of the stuff that we've done over the last 7 years that Ben and I have worked together. So DC's great because he's not only is he insanely talented and good at meeting deadlines, but he also is very diverse. His style can change from one project to the next easily. And then, we brought a bunch of other really awesome people in. Colin Nance is an artist who does a lot of synthwave work. His band Softaware, Softaware, is a band out of Austin, Texas, that does a lot of synthwave stuff. And he did the soundtrack for my short Nazi zombie film, A Chance in Hell. There's a guy named Colin, another guy named Colin, whose stage name is Robot Boot, and he was a friend of a guy that we met actually at the John Carpenter concert in Chicago. Ben and I were standing in line. Ben and I were standing in line to get Carpenter's autograph. We had the VIP passes, and the guys in front of us, this guy and his wife, had an original Halloween 2 soundtrack on vinyl, and we struck up a conversation with them about it. And they said, "Oh, we own a record store, yada yada yada. We actually were here because we know the guy who's opening for Carpenter. He's a DJ." And so we one way or another we got into the discussion of this guy doing 80s style synthwave stuff. We contacted him, and he provided some music for it. And then we have another constant collaborator, Matt Corbett, who Ben can tell you a little bit about, because Ben loves Corbett.
Oh, I love Corbett.
I do too.
Corbett has a bunch of tracks on Hog too. Corbett's fantastic. So we had a total of what? How many different musicians did we have? We had 8?
Maybe 8. Yeah, something like 8. Because even my buddy Pat Murphy did the guitar solo work for the opening title sequence for Skeletons when Ellie's in the bathroom getting ready. So yeah, there was a good mix of people, and everybody did some awesome stuff. Matt Corbett's got some really good, like the songs that he wrote 30 seconds of in the movie are actually elongated to full songs for the soundtrack, which is available on vinyl, and as well as digital download in the next week or so. So it's a lot of fun. It's a really cool soundtrack. It's very 80s inspired, and Ben and I, being such big fans of the generation, and the music that came from the generation, I think that we're both really proud of how well the soundtrack turned out, and how we were able to bring such cool artists together to create such an awesome soundtrack.
And once again, none of that in the screenplay. We didn't discuss that, so we got into the editing. How much music there was going to be, because it's like everything we do. Hog especially is wall to wall. But there's a lot in Skeletons. Initially, we were only talking about a handful of tracks, but there's a massive amount of music in that film.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun though, and that's music is and audio plays a big part in a movie. So we try not to skimp on it. It's I don't know. I really enjoyed Skeleton's soundtrack, and On the Hog has a great soundtrack too, with a lot of really cool artists, including a reduxed version of what is the name of that song?
Hetty.
Yeah, Hetty's song. What is the name of that song?
Never Been Any Reason.
Never Been Any Reason. Thank you. I always just want to say, save my life. I'm going down for the last time, or whatever.
Yeah.
I just want to sing it to people so they know what it is.
They know. They don't know the title, but everyone knows that song. Especially if you were born in the 70s, you definitely know that song.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's cool because it's like, the Rake came out last year, and we were excited for that because it got a pretty wide release. It was available in Walmarts everywhere, and, you can rent it on cable. It's on Amazon Prime right now. And then Skeletons came out a few months later, and we had a nice premiere in Chicago for that with a lot of our friends and family there. And it's picked up a nice little cult following on the internet, on Amazon Prime and iTunes and stuff. And now we've got High on the Hog coming out. It premieres next Friday in Los Angeles at the Arena Cine Lounge, Arena Cine Lounge on Sunset Boulevard. And Ben and I and our executive producer and creator of the movie, Kevin Lockhart's going to be there. So we're pretty excited about that. The movie's being released by Indican Pictures. I guess they have another Sid Haig movie as well that they're releasing. I think it's called Cynthia, right, Ben?
No, they released Cynthia. I think we're screening. I think next weekend when we screen, there's a marijuana documentary that's also screening there, which is also debuting. So it's going to be a pot-filled magic carpet ride.
Yeah. So we're excited about that. You got 3 features coming out within the course of a year. Is pretty exciting stuff. So, and people are going to love High on the Hog. It's batshit crazy. Sid Haig, unlike you've ever seen him. It's Robert Zadar's last role on camera. Joe Estevez is a lot of fun in it, and a lot of the other cast members are a hell of a lot of fun too. Without rattling all the names off, there's a lot of talents involved in that movie, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. And Ben's edit is fucking batshit. So if you have an attention span of 5 seconds, get ready for the ride of your life.
Yeah, get ready. Yeah, get ready to alter your attention span to 2 seconds.
Oh, jeez.
Well, first I'm going to have to say, God damn you, because now eventually I'm going to have to get the Skeletons in the Closet vinyl that I saw. So, yeah. Because I started to collect vinyl, and so I find myself to have a decent collection so far, I would say. But, yeah, that's a different story, but I'm only going after certain things. I'm not like one of those junkies that go, ooh, I want this. No. Anyway, but yeah, Skeletons in the Closet will be one that will be added to my vinyl collection for sure. Because, God damn it, I could not get that fucking theme song out of my head, and then Seth is like, oh, there you go. You're already singing the goddamn theme song. And I'm like, well, half the lyric is pretty much the saying Skeletons in the Closet. Of course, it's one of those goddamn songs.
That's how it gets you.
It's one of those songs that it's so catchy and you don't even realize it until you start singing it randomly.
And then you start yelling at yourself because it's just like, I've said to myself that I was not going to sing it, and then what happened? I start singing it! Anyway, next question is for Ben.
Was there anything taken out from any of the tales, or was there anything changed?
Yeah, there's deleted scenes, but for the most part, they're largely irrelevant. There was a terrific sequence in Tony's movie that we really wanted to keep, but it would require significant visual effects. I'll come back to this and let Tony talk about it. But in Dismantler was actually a far bigger, more ambitious movie because I wanted to lay the groundwork for a feature, which we technically could have done later, but it would have just been too big and too dangerous. But I cut out 3 or 4 scenes in Dismantler that helped round it out the mythos of the main villain, but they weren't necessary. And then as far as Chop Shop is concerned, there was a lot of B-roll we got rid of, but it wasn't really relevant. And then I can't really think of anything from the other 3. Nothing of significance. I think the most significant thing we lost would have been in Grandma. That was the one piece that Tony and I both really, really like, and it didn't serve any purpose without the visual effects component. Tony, you want to talk more about that?
Welcome to this nightmare.
Had to do it. Did you even hear that or no?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I was going to say it was probably pretty loud. Now it's going to be stuck in your head again, Paul. Congrats. Well, Ben, what scene are you talking about? Like the tarp stuff or what?
No. The one in the bathroom with the butterflies.
Oh. So what I really wanted to do
was it.
Yeah, well, there's other parts of that. There's other pieces with that, like the tarp in the garage. So what I really wanted to do was I wanted to try and throw the audience for a loop where, you know, you don't know if the weird shit that the little girl in Grandma O'Malley's closet or pantry is seeing is real or not. And so I wanted to really embellish her imagination on screen as much as possible. So I wanted to incorporate different things that she's seeing that are just her imagination. Like there's a scene where she's in the bathroom washing her hands after her grandma tells her to wash her hands. And the wallpaper is all these shimmering butterflies. It's a very 70s wallpaper in this bathroom. And you guys know which part I'm talking about?
What part is it again? Sorry. Which one?
I was going to say, we lost them then. So when the little girl's washing her hands after the grandma's like, you're filthy, go rinse up.
Oh,
and the little girl goes to the bathroom to wash her hands. She's in this bathroom with all these butterflies on the wall. The wallpaper is this kind of like shiny butterfly wallpaper. And I wanted to make some of the butterflies' wings flutter, you know, like she's watching them kind of moving their wings and stuff. And so I wanted to create the idea that this little girl has an overactive imagination. And so the audience is watching this thinking that she's making her grandma, who's just very strict and very old-fashioned and very unloving, that she's basically making all this up, that her grandma's not this evil thing, this monster, you know. And then at the end you realize, holy shit, her grandma actually is a monster. So we weren't able to do stuff like make the butterflies on the wall fly. And there was a couple other segments where I wanted to do similar stuff with like that.
What was the one
we didn't have time.
The camera coming through the window late at night? Remember when the breeze was moving in the curtains?
So when Casey goes to sleep after her mom tucks her in, it kind of like fades and you come back in and the camera's kind of like swooping down on her bed while she's sleeping, and she wakes up and kind of goes to the open closet. You know, the closet door opens up and she walks across the moonlit room to the closet door, and the grandma's in there being all scary and shit. And what I wanted the camera to fly through the curtains that are blowing in the wind. Kind of like when you see like the original Superman movie with Christopher Reeves, when they're flying through the clouds, you know, and you're like first person perspective, just kind of flying through the clouds. I wanted to do stuff like that, and you know, have the camera flying through these billowing curtains, and then all of a sudden it emerges out of the curtains, and here's the girl sleeping in the bed, and she wakes up and rises up to meet the camera, and then gets out of the bed and goes to the closet and finds her grandma being all scary in there. But, you know, when you don't have a lot of time, that was back in the day when we were still shooting what were so affectionately called Tony Wash half days, which meant that that meant that we were shooting for at least 16 hours, because I used to go very long on my shoots, and the cast and crew hated it. So, you know, we were probably 14 hours in, and the guys were tired, so we just said, all right, screw it, we're gonna cancel that shot, we'll do something else. And so we just kind of minimized it a bit. But yeah, there was stuff like that was kind of sacrificed or left on the cutting room floor. When she finds her mom's car in the garage, there's a whole sequence where she's trying to get out from underneath the big tarp that's thrown over the car, and she kind of gets like lost inside the tarp because it's so big and billowy that she gets lost. And that was kind of be another one of those moments where she starts, seeing things that aren't really there. And Ben incorporated a bit of that into the edit, but it's not as elaborate as it had originally, was supposed to be.
Kind of like with the one part there where I believe it's when also the little girl goes and sees her mother's car with the tarp over it, where we see like the tarp over the camera per se, and it looked like there's a hand trying to reach upward, and I believe there's like blood splatter or something. I believe that might be the same scene or somewhere around that area. I do remember there's like a weird segment like that.
Yeah, that you might be referring to part of the edit. And Ben had, he actually did a really cool thing where he tried to incorporate the idea that like a lot of the bad tracking for the videotape that they're watching, because the widow complains about the tracking, there being issues with static and stuff, and them needing to get a free rental because the tape is bad. Which is, something that all of us are all too familiar with back in the day when we would rent videotapes from video stores. And so Ben did a really cool thing where with Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, and I don't know if he tried to incorporate it with some of the other shorts where the bad things, the evil aspects of the movie Chop Shop actually affected the quality of the tape as the widow and Charlie are watching it. So every time the grandma is being creepy, the VHS tape gets a little staticky and warps a little bit, and you get these flashes of other shots of the grandma being all demented and messed up and stuff. And so, he did that to not only be symbolic and kind of cool, in an artistic manner, but it also ends up helping, to build tension in those scenes. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, and I'll say it again, Ben, you did a good job with the edit. And I definitely like the, what do I want to call it, the green smoke, that kind of transition from scene to scene sometimes. I like that idea, too. I thought that was very...
The goosebumps?
Yeah!
I think that was Tony's idea, actually. We had talked about some transition for a long time, but we never really figured it out until I don't know if Tony actually said goosebumps. I think he just said green mist. No, you know what it was? We were talking about Dracula, I think. Remember the Francis Coppola Dracula? That's what it was.
Yeah, that is an insanely inspirational film for me, and so I that's really what that was, because that movie's got a lot of really awesome camera work and stuff in it.
Oh yeah,
so.
I will agree. There's nothing like old classics, and I don't know if some of these older films that we either grew up with or found within the years of growing up to can ever be done again. But then again, with Hollywood nowadays, they're trying to remake anything they can get their goddamn hands on. So yeah, it sucks. But yeah, that's one film that is always one I go back to myself. So Tony, how did you guys, or Ben too, if you were even part of the chit chat as well, how did you guys pick your casting crew for each? Well, if for each tale or the movie in general.
Yeah, Tony approaches casting differently than I do. I just kind of wing it. Tony actually studies stuff. He actually does research. Now, with Dismantle, it was harder because I didn't need an actor. I needed 2 stuntmen and an asshole. And I think that's actually what I said. And I got just that. I got a great asshole, and because Steve is a terrific villain, and then I got 2 stuntmen, and that's really all I needed. I didn't need actors. It's one of the reasons that I moved so much around in that movie, because. But Tony, on the other hand, Tony actually researches. Tony's very, very good with casting. And if you pay attention carefully, the casting of all of the movies is quite good. Especially when it comes to the two new films, which is Killers in the House and then SITC. The best story, and I'll let Tony tell this one, but the best story in terms of casting is probably Charlie, played by another long hair that we know named Adam Michaels. But Tony, give him that story, because that one's the best, because Adam has, by the time we were shooting that, he had virtually no acting experience.
So Adam is a friend of my friend Darcy Wood. Darcy was in It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, and has been in pretty much everything I've shot ever since. I think we've collaborated on 5 or 6 different projects together now. She's the longest running person that I've worked with in the film industry. And so when we were casting for The Rake in 2015, she was like, please reach out to Adam Michaels. He's a Chicago actor. He's a musician. He's an artist. And he's very, very talented. So I think we had him audition. I don't really remember because my memory's terrible. And just didn't really seem to fit for The Rake. But then, or he didn't audition. And then when we were doing Skeletons, somehow or another, it got back to where, we started talking and she again brought him up. And so we auditioned him, and a lot of what I did would be Skype auditions. I would just jump online with people and have them audition, or I'd have people send me a videotape of them, a video file of them taped previously, reading their lines. And I would kind of watch them and check out their previous work and stuff. And Adam, I don't know. I was having a hard time picturing him giving the delivery the way that I wanted it to sound and the way that I felt Johnny had written it, because Johnny is very sarcastic. And so the way that his stuff is written, even there's a lot of times where I even have a hard time understanding the inflection that is meant to be, put underneath the way that something's said. And so I just wasn't really sold with Adam. But at the same time, he was like my favorite of the group and that I'd had audition. And I felt like, and I knew how eager he was to impress us and be a part of the project. So I think I had like 2 or 3 more conversations with him after the first audition. And finally I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to cast this guy because we had to settle on an actor, because we had to mold his head, do a life cast so that we could then have Jason start sculpting the Charlie mask. So I was just like, all right, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to go with Adam. I'm going to put my faith in Darcy's word that he's great and that we can work with him. And as soon as Adam got to set and put on that mask, he changed 100%. He was a totally different person. His voice sounded different. His mannerisms were different. Like, I don't even recognize him when he's wearing the Charlie mask versus what he looks like when he's not in the mask. So that was a lot of fun. And everybody else, it's a mixed bag. Like I said, Lainey is my friend Karen's daughter. But Elizabeth, the babysitter, was an audition. I believe that she was somebody that we got in touch with through backstage.com or freecastingcall.com or one of those websites. I would put posts up and then I review all the audition footage, and the ones I'd pass on to Ben and see what his thoughts were. And, that's pretty much what we do with all that.
I think that was your call too. I wanted to go with somebody else, and Tony's like, no, I like her for some reason. You couldn't put your finger on it, but she nailed
I think
nailed that role.
Yeah. And it's just interesting how it all works out. It was the same thing with Ellie Church. When we were doing the pickup shots for High on the Hog in summer of 2016, we had talked about the handful of different scenes we were going to do. And one of the sequences was incorporating this kind of narrator character, Mary Jane, who is a DJ of a radio station that plays throughout the movie, that Kevin and Ben and cinematographer Rob and I had all talked about. And so it was like, well, okay, who's going to do this? And so I reached out to Scott Shermer and a couple other people who are independent filmmakers, and was like, who are some actresses that that have the chops to do this part? And I got a couple of names, and Ellie was one of them, and she was very interested in being in the movie, obviously because Sid Haig's in it, and she ended up getting the part. We had a great time working with her on On the Hog, and then from there, I went to Ben, and I was like, dude, like she would be perfect for the Widow. And at the time, I don't think the Widow was named the Widow yet. I had given her that name later on once we were working on the script, but. We initially talked to Ellie about playing the Widow character, and she read the first draft of the script, and she wasn't interested. She's like, I don't feel like there's enough for me to do to make this character my own because I'm sitting on a couch the entire time. And it took a good amount of convincing in order to get her to be a part of it. But I'll tell you, she is damn thankful she did, because afterwards she was very appreciative of being a part of the movie, and I know she's a big fan of the movie. And so
Tony was on in Shit Creek because Ellie didn't want to do it, and I told Tony that if she doesn't do it, then I quit, which makes absolutely no sense. But he convinced her there was more meat there, because I think either Tony told her or I told her. I was like, look, it doesn't read as well as it's going to look. We will make it come alive in the editing room like everything else we do. And then, Tony said something romantic about movies, and then she's like, all right, we'll figure it out when we get there. And then God damn, that would have been a movie without her.
Oh yeah, no. We would have found another actress to play the Widow, but Ellie brings a certain degree of personality to the character that's unique to Ellie Church, and she is a scream queen, and then it's awesome to have somebody who's as popular on the independent circuit as Ellie is, who's kind of the face of the movie. So it ended up working out in the end. And everybody's glad that it worked out as well as it did. The same could be said for our co-producer Rob. I mean, when I first pitched Rob the idea of doing skeletons, he was like, "Nope, I don't want to. I'm not interested. I don't want to do anything. I'm fucking done with skeletons. I'm done with Chop Shop. I don't want any part of it." And then
I think that's the direct quote.
Oh, pretty much. And I got no problem saying that. He can't get mad at me. I mean, that's exactly what happened. And then from there, it's like at the time, Rob and our friend Jim Peterson, who Ben brought up earlier, the three of us were living in a house together. So I just, sprinkle in little tidbits of inspiration here and there to Rob when I'd see him throughout the day, about doing this movie. And I basically put it all together and said, look, the production's ready to go. You just have to agree to shoot it and give me some dates and we'll shoot it. And so he finally agreed to be a part of it, and I think he's glad that he was, because we finished it. We made a feature, and now we can move on instead of having these things sitting on a shelf for perpetuity.
And that tends to happen a lot, where like movies can get shelved and never either be made, or they just sit there and never be released after it's made. It's a pain in the ass. So yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So, but I will have to say, Ellie definitely fit the Widow really good. I felt like she brought the character to life with Charlie as well, especially as she murdered Charlie and was almost going to murder him again for the second time, I should say. So, yeah, that was very, I don't know, her character is definitely a host. Not really I don't want to say like we have seen it, but she definitely has shown us something that we don't really, I should say, she shows us things that we aren't really familiar with. She brings stuff new to the table as being a host, and it's not the same thing over and over, even though there is two hosts. So, and it was, I'm trying to remember the guy's name that wrote Charlie's line and stuff to bring those two together, right? It was
Johnny.
Yeah. So Johnny did a really good job putting the two hosts together. It was almost like he took some type of married couple in a way, like you were saying earlier, with like Olivia with the Crypt Keeper, and just kind of made it look like, even though Charlie is dead, they're still together down in the basement watching movies, even though Charlie can't move. So, yeah, it was a nice little touch. And I definitely enjoyed the two hosts. And I can see why a lot of people, from what I've read, they say the Widow and Charlie is like one of their favorite dual hosts ever. So I can see why, because they were written really well, and both the actors were just, phenomenal. They made them both come to life, and I think that usually how some hosts maybe fail. I hate saying that, but like, you're watching a show and it's just one host maybe, and it doesn't feel believable. So you're either getting taken out of it or you're just not paying attention, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and here's the best part. Like Tony mentioned earlier, outside of some Skype work, that was the first time those two actors had ever met that morning. And that just shows you the strength of those two actors, because they didn't have any real prep time. I mean, you guys did like a working audition on Skype, the three of you, didn't you? At least once, or no?
One time, I want to say we did one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
impressive.
Yeah.
Again, I think the chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just all in all, in the end, it's awesome that it all came together and that it worked out and that we were able to turn a couple of short films that had been sitting on a shelf for a few years into a pretty cool feature-length film that we're all pretty happy about, and that may very well spin, either a television series or sequels off of. So it's pretty cool that there's potential in the commodity beyond the original concept. And, again, seeing something grow from an idea in my head 20 years ago when I was 20 years old to now where it's actually a movie that people can sit and watch, in their homes from Amazon Prime or wherever, is pretty cool. So I'm just glad that it all worked out the way it did. And, Ben and I surround ourselves with an amazing team of people. Our film family here in Illinois is a tremendous family, and we're very thankful to have such amazingly talented people at our sides when we make these projects. And, they're all making big things now and getting paid a lot of money, so we can't make more movies with them, but we'll see if we can convince them on the next project.
Yeah, I get that. That's always a good thing. It's just all about the connection. I mean, because it sounds like you guys work so well, and I will say real quick, go team! And it's just that chemistry of working together, and it sounds like everybody liked each other and didn't want to slap each other or break noses or whatever, arms, whatever, leg. Nobody's in wheelchairs, so it's all good. Everybody is not like Charlie. They didn't get murdered, and
there's no dismembered body parts flying all over the place.
Yeah, so I want to see why they wouldn't want to work with you guys again. So I mean, it's just about that connection. So if the connection is strong, the force will be with you. Yes.
Yeah.
I went there.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get another one going soon. So we'll see what happens. But we really appreciate you guys having us on the show. It means a lot to help us promote the projects and all the hard work everybody puts into these things.
Well, a lot of people need to start appreciating independent filmmakers more anyway. So they can't just bash them. That I'm trying to think how I worded this before, but they need to start to learn that, it takes a lot for an independent artist as you guys to make something, to create it. especially if you guys are funding it all yourselves and not using like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And on top of that, if somebody says that your movie sucks, well, I guess the best response would be, well, I'd like to see you make a fucking movie.
Exactly.
So that's the way I look at it. But anyway, so you kind of mentioned it too there, Tony, of where people can kind of see your film there, Skeletons in the Closet. But even if they wanted to watch The Rake or It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want to and Skeletons in the Closet, where can people either watch or buy Skeletons in the Closet?
You can watch The Rake and Skeletons in the Closet on Amazon Prime. They're both on iTunes. Skeletons in the Closet is on Popcorn Flicks, which is a website that has ad-based movies streaming, as well as Fright Picks. You can watch The Rake on pretty much any cable or VOD platform except for Netflix. So again, Amazon, iTunes. It might be on Hulu. I know it's on Comcast cable, which is the cable system that we have here in the Midwest. Let's see. You can go to, if you want physical copies of any of this stuff, all the merchandise can be found at scotchworthy.com. Scotchworthy is like a bottle of scotch, and worthy like we are not worthy, but all one word. Scotchworthy.com. You just go to the store there, and you can order Skeletons in the Closet on Blu-ray. You can order the vinyl, which I'm supposed to be getting in the next week from the printing company, so that's exciting. The Rake DVDs you can buy from me, but you have to message me on the website or whatever. And my older films are also on there as well, including It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want to, which is a choose-your-own-adventure DVD. So if you want to watch a fun choose-your-own-adventure horror film that was made years before the Black Mirror Bandersnatch episode on Netflix, you can jump on and pick up a copy of It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want to, which has a Tom Savini cameo in it and lots of practical blood and special effects. So, yeah, that's pretty much where you can find all that stuff. Ben's got some stuff out there, too, that he can kind of inform you on.
If you want more information on High on the Hog, which debuts next Friday at the Arena Cine Lounge in Hollywood, and then the rollout for physical media, specifically DVD and Redbox and streaming, I believe, starts at the end of April. The distributor hasn't been specific about that. And then Kevin, Tony, and I should be in Las Vegas for Days of the Dead in June to roll out the Blu-ray. So that's, but like I said, if you want information about what's going on with that movie, just go to highandthehogmovie.com. Plus, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram. I don't know if High on the Hog has a Twitter page. It might. Does it? I don't think so.
I don't. Yeah, I don't pay attention to Twitter. I mean, we're both on Instagram and Facebook. So you can find us on there. High on the Hog's on Facebook and Instagram as well. So you can find that on there. You can pre-order High on the Hog on iTunes. It's also it's up on Google Play, but you can't watch it yet. And it's on Fandango as well. So those are just a couple of the places where it is available. Our distributor.
I think it's also the number 3 streaming trailer on iTunes right now.
Sweet. Number 3.
I don't know what that means, but it's a thing apparently.
Probably the most watched, if I had to guess. I don't know.
Yeah, if you guys like skeletons, trust me, you're gonna love High on the Hog. Holy shit!
Oh boy.
Yeah,
just fair warning. Don't drop any acid or eat any mushrooms until you get out of the first 30 minutes of the movie.
I'll make note of that.
When you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Oh boy. Well.
Yep. That type of cinema.
Oh boy. Well, this sounds like a high time. Wait, can I say that? Sure.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Why not? It's a high time.
You're gonna say it.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say holy shit of the talk I think it was over a little bit of over 2 hours and I don't know, 10, 20 minutes, if I had to guess. So it was a really nice chat. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope everybody else listening did too. And I want to thank Tessa for helping me out too, because holy crap, a lot of information and questions. And you guys are more than welcome to come back on to chat anytime.
Thank you.
And
we appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Even if you wanted to come on just to state your opinion on, I don't know, some movie or whatever. And yeah, we're glad we have you guys back.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much for having us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
You're welcome. And for everybody listening, just remember, if you're trying to go out into the woods, stay the fuck away if you start to notice that there's a rake involved. But then again, it might already be too late, because it might already be inside you. And then, if you are one of those people that have nothing to do and just stuff shit in the closet, well, maybe you might want to make sure that you are not burying yourself with a skeleton in the closet. So have fun, guys. And as always, stay scary.